All right, it is the Humanly Podcast. I'm your host, Tim, Mr. Meaningful Work Olari, and I am joined by a writer, thought leader, hugger extraordinaire. We've got Mr. Tim Sackett in the building. I wish I had one of those things that go, bing, 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 bing.
I wish I would. I need to have like Tim, Mr. Just get your ass back to work, Sackett.
Like, what is your moniker? Like, Mr. Tim, get in the building. Sackett. But dude, I am so excited to have you here today. We're excited to have this conversation with you on this podcast. The whole premise of the Humanly Podcast is really to explore the nuances and the dynamics of the future of work and really delve into the stories that are driving us, the experiences that are driving us to this future of work. And these conversations are how we do it. So in lieu of a super long bio intro and just reading off all of these beautiful accolades that you have, one of the things I like to do for my guests is ask them, what are you famous for? And that could be, and I actually want two answers. I want you to start with what you're famous for personally, like what your circle of friends and family know Mr. Sackett for, and then professionally, what are you famous for? So what's your fame, man?
So it's weirdly, I think I'm famous for hugging, which can be creepy and like all at the same time. And so I'll tell the story quickly, and I've told it a lot, but like, so there was a SHRM annual conference in Atlanta, and I had a client that was there that we did a bunch of work with, and I just said, hey, we're both going to be there. It was like, I think it was, like a Monday evening. I spoke on like first thing, like 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And so we went to dinner, had a couple bottles of wine. I'm a hugger, she's a hugger. And when we go to say goodbye, and I've worked with this woman for, years. She kissed me right in the mouth. And I'm married, happily married, over 30 years married, 3 grown children married.
Yeah.
And so like we left, it was in her hotel. She went to her room. I went directly outside and called my wife and go, you're not going to believe what just happened. Now, again, in hindsight, I think she was just a little tipsy, came in, it was not meant to be like a romantic kiss. But like in my mind, because I write every day, like in the blog. And so I went back to my room and I'm like, there should be rules about this. Like you can't just kiss somebody professionally. But I also knew like I couldn't say like I couldn't write that, that this happened because she's going to read it because she reads the blog. And so like in a half drunken stupor at 11:30 at night, I wrote the 11 rules of hugging at work, and then and put it up, scheduled it to go the next morning, and then went and like at 7 a.m. spoke. It went live while I was speaking, and I get off stage and literally had hundreds of text messages. And then I'm like, my first thing was, oh shit, what did I write? Like you don't remember.
Yeah.
But during that time, it was when LinkedIn only had. It was like 12 people could publish on LinkedIn. It was Jeff Weiner, the CEO, like Obama, Richard Branson. Like, remember that time? There's that weird window where they were like, only certain people can publish. And like, they weren't even publishing. It was their PR teams. But anyways, it was like, and so he published. He's like, oh, it's like somebody shared it with him. He published and it went like 1 million, like it went viral like instantly.
Yeah.
And so I was getting calls from like, San Diego Radio Morning Zoo, like, hey, we have Tim Sackett on the line. He's like and then they'll go, the world's foremost expert in workplace hugging. And I'm just like,
we're going to have you on CNN. And so joining us today, we have the leading expert.
It's the classic 15 minutes of fame of like, people are like, why are these people hugging at work? Blah, blah, blah. And what you come to find is like, people are either huggers or they're violently non-huggers, like Karate Kid. I will kick you if you try to get close to me hugging. And there's no in between.
Come out.
There's no in between. So I spent like the next 5 years when I went to go speak, everybody would say you have to do the hugs. Like you have to
Yeah,
do the hugging thing.
yeah,
So I would spend 15 minutes. I would go out in the audience. I would try to find the biggest dude possible. I'm not a big guy. I'm like 5'7", so small
yeah,
in stature. I
yeah,
would find like the 6'6" giant human,
yeah,
and I would say, "Hey, will you stand up?" And we'll show the crowd, right? We'll
yeah,
show some of the hugs. And what happens with dudes is they become a bored when you hug. Like guys want to hug out, like you're like, "Yeah, bam, dap, gone," you know. And
yeah.
I would literally hold them and not let go, and they just got tighter and tighter and freezing as I'm like burying into their chest, going, "You smell so good," you know. Um, and
Hold me.
yeah, the crowd the crowd loved it. They would lose their mind just seeing this dynamic of two dudes hugging, and then the difference in size and one person being so uncomfortable. Um,
Oh man.
so I would say that my wife calls me a micro celebrity. She's like, "There's 13 HR ladies in the world that want your picture," and I think it's so appropriate from that standpoint. Um,
I love it.
so so yeah, and then like personally, um, that's an interesting. Probably a better question, right? When people say like, "What are you known for personally?"
Yeah.
Um, I'm an introvert, so I have a ton of friends, and I say yes to everything. It's probably my downfalls because
Mm.
like I'm that guy when you call and like, "Hey, we're moving on Saturday," and I'm like, "Sure, yeah, I'll be there." Like, and
Yeah.
really, is that really what you want to do? Like, no, I say yes to everything.
Well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I love the personal approach, right? The thing I like about the hugging piece is that it it breaks down these barriers, right? You have it your comfort zone has to be down. The trust is almost like forced, if you would. I know forced is the right word, but like in that moment, whether it's a staged hug or a real hug, like at that moment when we're chest to chest, right, cheek to cheek, right, like we're
Hmm.
or cheek to chest, whatever it is, right. In that moment, like those barriers are broken, and it's just two humans, right? It's two humans that are connected, and that's really what any work that we do is about, right? It's about the humans that are driving it. And the way that work gets done is by that, Stephen Covey talks about the speed of trust, right?
Hmm.
And how we can build that, enable that, and celebrate that in cool and creative ways, right? You found a cool and creative way to do that. From that, you talk a lot about HR and talent acquisition and all of those things, and we'll dive into that. But the way that I want us to kind of have this conversation, because even in your bio, right, you say husband first, father, and then everything else. And often,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
sometimes it's not in that order, but I think leading with that is super important. And that's kind of the basis of what our conversation is going to be today is, you know, as we talk about talent, we, start with talent acquisition. And you
Hmm.
had a recent piece today talking about wanting to be wanted, which I just found so beautiful about the dynamic of recruiting and hiring managers and candidates and how we just want to be wanted. And I was thinking about my relationship, right? Thinking about them, it's almost like this is going to be Tim and Tim marriage counseling, marriage counseling session. But that dynamic of pursuing, right? When you're pursuing your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your crush or
Yeah.
your interest, the things that you do to impress them and be center of their attention and be top of mind. But talk to me a little bit about how that relates to, in your experience, the talent acquisition process, bringing
Yeah.
folks in, and in relation to, I've been married for 10 years, would be this year, and
Hmm.
dated her for a year before that. How long have you and your wife been married?
32 years.
Woo, congratulations. We need to have like an applause effect and claps all over the place.
Confetti blowing
Um,
up. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so in the light of marriage and relationships and that pursuit, talk to us about that shift of having the candidate feel wanted and
Yeah.
pursued in that employment relationship.
Yeah, Tim, I call this like the recruiter superpower, right? And by the way, it's not just a recruiter superpower. We all have this superpower. It's like an innate human superpower. but so many of us don't ever use it, or we always are worried about the reciprocating factor. And even in recruiting, like one of the things that of why recruiters fail is constantly this rejection side. But
Mm.
yet, and here's what happens. And so I always I'd love to share this scenario. It's like, I have a great job, love my job. It's rare that anybody could ever offer me a job. And I've been offered really big jobs that I've just said, thank you. But like, no, I have a great job. Now,
Yeah.
if the Lakers call and offer me the head coaching job, I'm taking that job, right? Like that might be
Even
the
after
only.
yesterday, or was it the day before that?
I
That
don't
little.
care. Yeah, I don't care. Also, there's probably not very. I mean, really any NBA head coaching job I'd probably take. But anyways,
Yeah.
so here's what happens in this, like today, like somebody could call you and they offer you, like they're talking to you about some job, not really a job you want.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, and you do the pleasantries and say, okay, no, no thank you, blah blah blah. You get off the phone, and like the first person you run into, your wife, a friend, a business colleague, you even go, God, man, I got this call, man. Like I didn't want this, but like
Yeah.
you're so like we feel so good that somebody actually wanted us that we have
Yeah.
to share. Everybody
Yeah.
shares. It's like
Yes.
I didn't want that job, but they
Yeah.
wanted me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so often when you get recruiters to really think in that sense of you're calling all these people and they're gonna, even if they don't want your job, they're gonna go tell everybody that you offered them a job or that you
Mm-hmm.
wanted them for this job,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the single most, to me, it's the single most powerful emotion that we face is this: we want to be wanted by
Right.
others. And
Yeah.
if and that's why I always tell like my team is it's either a yes or a no. There's no in
Yeah.
between in recruiting. Either they say yes, they are interested in the job, or no, they're not. But like a no response just means they haven't said yes or no yet. Like get
Yeah.
there. And the more you pay attention to them, the more you could break them down. And again, like, with our, significant others, usually in life, there was a piece that we had to break them down to go, why would I want to spend the rest of my life with this guy?
Yeah.
Um, and that's part of that
Yeah.
pursuance of, we all want to be pursued by somebody. And like constantly, that's the one trait that I see in the best recruiters in the world
Mm.
is it's not that they have the best technology or they don't have the best phone voice. They just pursue people better.
Yeah. Yeah. They pursue them, and that's and I think about, I mean, my day job now, where I work, serving at a healthcare system out here on the West Coast, and coming in, I think one of the most impressionable, or the piece that I was most impressed with on the recruiting process was when I was talking to the executive that I would be reporting to, um, and how she, I mean, in the conversation of, asking about my strengths, right? What do I want to do? How do I want to grow? And then weaving the organization and what they're doing to fit that. It's like trying to come, is like, look, if this is what you want to do, then you need to be here. Like, and it just felt like this, this draw, this, somebody was, when you feel like somebody is flirting with you, like that kind of, oh, stop, like, come on, you like,
Yeah.
and that was that sense. It was like, man, they're really trying to impress and draw, and it gets, harder to say no, like in those situations, especially if it's starting to align with what your goals and aspirations and, career path or trajectory
Yeah.
is. But that
There's
that piece of being pursued is huge.
Yeah, there's a huge misnomer that most people change jobs for promotion. Actually, most people actually change lateral jobs. Like, and
Mm,
that's, and so people they don't think of that. So like, you're like, well, this person's a project engineer, and like, would they really want to come work for us as a project engineer? And like, and so often we just give up on those, like, because they're like,
mhm.
oh, they wouldn't want this because it's just a lateral move. But like, think about how often someone's working for a company where the company just doesn't find them pretty anymore, right? They're not
Yeah,
paying attention to them.
yeah,
And all of a sudden
yeah,
someone comes along and is like, hey, you're pretty and I want to pay
yeah,
attention to you. And
yeah,
we have this better thing over here and better culture and better blah.
yeah,
And all of a sudden and they change and they go
yeah,
work someplace else. And,
yeah,
they'll say it's like, oh, well, we were able to pay them, a few thousand more an hour, or maybe it was a little
yeah,
closer and all those things, which do matter. But at the end of the day, it was really because somebody just paid attention to them and made them feel pretty again.
yeah, yeah. And to that point, I mean, this is perfect segue as far as, so once you're in that relationship, how do you, stay pretty or stay interested or stay engaged? You mentioned in your book that like talent acquisition, should own retention, right? Folks that are going to stay. We have this whole thing, I think it was like 2021, you had COVID in 2020, and then 2020 you had this great resignation. Everybody was leaving. And then you had, quiet quitting, and then loud quitting, and then like all of these things around people jumping and moving around. And, you talk about, so if you do the attracting properly, right, bring them in. Now it's about how do we keep folks. So talk to us a little bit about, right, so you've been at 32 years, I've been in my marriage 10 years, and it's work to keep those things going as the real lifeness of life starts to happen. So talk to us a little bit about that retention and engagement piece, and where the talent acquisition leaders should be doing.
Yeah, I think it's critical moments in people's professional and personal lives that is where this all falls apart. There's only so many. For the most part, most of the stuff we do every day is just me coming in, doing the work. Everyone's kind of doing the work, and then there's little tiny things that come up throughout the years that we work with people that are big things for them in their life. Could be having a child, could be getting married, could be a parent or someone passes away or something like that. That all you can do with that in that way is support them 100%, and know that if you do, it's going to, for the most part, 99% of the time, it's going to reciprocate back to you, right?
Yeah.
And so I tend to set this up, and I have super long tenure, and I always like to I would make jokes because I'm just the greatest person to work for. I'm not the greatest person to work for. I always think I have super high expectations, and I'm very direct, which isn't usually lend itself well to high tenure, right?
Yeah.
But what I do support and what I tell them is look, I'm going to teach you a set of skills. I want to see you be so successful that other companies are going to pursue you and want to take you. My hope is that I'll never allow somebody to overpay you the value that I think you're in. So I'm going to pay you well. And I'm going to give you the freedom to act like an adult. And then those little times where you really need me to support you, I'm all in. Whatever you need, you do you. Now, I've only had it blow back once in my life, because here's what happens is, especially in the bigger companies that you're in there, you have to have rules, Tim, around bereavement. It's 2 days if your spouse dies, or we'll give you 3 days. Are you fucking kidding me? 3 days if your spouse dies? That's what you're gonna give me? So we don't have a bereavement policy. We go, look, you take the time you need for you. Yeah. And just keep us informed of how we can support you, help you, blah, blah, blah. I've had one time where it blew back, where somebody just literally was taking weeks and wasn't communicating. And at the end of the day, they were just taking advantage of the situation. One time in all of my career that's happened. For the most part, people actually are so appreciative they bend over backwards and probably come back and are back to where they need to be from a performance standpoint faster, because you gave them this freedom to decide on their own. But so often as companies, we won't do that, right? And again, I want to know, about their kids and their families. And because again, you and I both know, while there's a lot of joy there, there's also a lot of heartache and frustration, and it's hard, right, to raise a family and do all that day in, day out, and, sick kids and this and that. And that's the stuff where that separates you from a bad employer to a good employer. When you have managers or leaders that are trained to say you lead by policy versus you lead by human, that's where all that stuff breaks down. So the other thing too that I love is because it's also signs and symbols. When somebody leaves us, we tend to, do the classic Jewish thing, rip our clothes, you're dead to us, you're no longer on the team, we hate you. I don't do that. I make sure that I support people. I give them a hug on the way out the door. I follow up with them the weeks after. We invite them back for lunches, what we have at work and stuff like that, activities we do. Because I want people to go, look, I'm not doing this just because you work here. I'm doing this because I value you, right, as a person. And I'm going to continue to value you even though you leave us. And again, what I find is that it's more of a value to the people working for you because they're like going, they see that and go, oh, that's cool. Like I know if I leave here, if I make the decision to leave here, how hard it's going to be. I'm going to be supported still, and
Yeah.
that's like so calming for them.
Yeah.
And like I said, like for the most part, they decide not to leave. You know.
Yeah. Dude, that is so consistent. When I talk to great HR leaders and they're saying similar things, we had a previous conversation with Claude Silver over at Vayner, and what you just mentioned was consistent about. So we talk about the pre-employment, the attraction process, the in-employment, the engagement, retention, but then there's also honoring in post-employment, right? How do we honor you on your next journey or on your way out, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a whole, you're a human. You're not only a human to us when you're here with us, right? It is everything around that makes you who you are. So what you did before and what you're going to do after, and how can we enable you to be successful in that next thing, and be okay, right? That is the fact that you're able to wrap that up in such a meaningful way, and it's consistent with the folks that are really thinking about it. That's heartwarming, man.
I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with leaders that they've hired people that worked for me. And then, like, again, I can maintain these relationships, and you're in a conference or something. I'll have somebody come up to me. They're like, hey, I'm Mary. I hired, John from you a couple of years ago. And he's like, holy crap. I feel like every day I'm held to your standard by John. Like, it's like, and like, and
Yeah,
so, like, I know that that's working, right,
yeah,
from that standpoint. Because to me, that's like the best thing ever. Is like they come back and say, "Hey, they're a great employee. They're doing great at their job," and I'm not looking to steal them back. It's
yeah.
just like, oh my gosh, like they just constantly are sharing like things in ways, and it's made them a better leader or whatever that might be. And to me, that's the magic
That's
of that.
beautiful. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so we're gonna switch modes a little bit now,
Yeah.
going from being a husband and the pursuer and the relationship to being a dad, parenthood, fatherhood. So I have three kids. My twin girls just turned 7 yesterday, and then I have an 8-year-old boy. You have kids?
3 boys, 20,
Three.
26, or I just turned 27, 25, and 20.
Man, so yours are out. They're
Two off,
out.
two off the pay, yeah, two off the payroll, one still in college. So
One still being supported there. And so one of the things that I think about as it relates to working with people and HR leadership and fatherhood is the need to drive results, right? You talk about, I think one of your recent blog posts as well was talking about leaders and results. And maybe it's just being a man or being a father and just being a driver. One of the lessons that I see all the time is I try to do mass parenting, copy and paste parenting, where it's the same thing for everybody.
yeah,
In the morning is probably like the most stressful time because I'm trying to get everybody out to get to school, right? We're trying to get everybody out. And one of my daughters, my sweet baby girl, Jael, the youngest of the twins, just is so slow. Like she takes a bite and then she thinks and then she ponders and she looks at the spoon and then she looks at the table. She doesn't even need to have, and it just takes
yeah,
painstakingly forever. Meanwhile, the brother and sister, they're done. They're out jumping on the trampoline. They got their stuff done. Like they're waiting at the car. And Jael is just like, and just this fit. And I'm like, take another bite. Like, let's go. And so, as it relates to, hey, we're trying to get somewhere. We're trying to move in a certain direction. But you have these people that have differences, different styles, different paces. Talk to us a little bit about the leadership aspect and maybe some of the lessons that you've learned from fatherhood, raising 3 boys, and the team that you have. Yeah, talk to us a little bit about that dynamic.
yeah. I think I was lucky enough to, and it probably fits to my leadership style of having 3 boys that are completely exact. I mean, there's opposites, right?
Yeah,
People always said like, "Oh, do your kids fight?" Like, no, they never fought because they were so different from each other. There was never that. I think people that really get into it are when they're so similar to each other
Yeah,
that
there
becomes
was nothing in
competitive
common to
for
fight
leadership.
about. Like,
There's nothing in common to fight about. But that's one of the failures of leadership, right? We think
mm,
like we try to do leadership like an assembly line or a manufacturing plant, which is there's important. Like I always, because I'm a very results oriented person.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, how you get the result doesn't really necessarily become the most important thing. The result
mm,
is the most important thing. And what we get tied up in the process of how to get the result because we think that's the magic of it. And yet, like we're into all these people where we can get that result in a lot of different ways if we give people freedom to work in the way they're most comfortable in, but we hold them accountable to the result.
yeah,
Like you'd be shocked at how some people get this. Like I have recruiters that seemingly like they work 20 hours a week and get the result. And they're in like in the old days, I would be like whipping them to work the other 20 hours, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
but not really getting any more result because
yeah,
like now they're going to feel awful about having to work instead of going like, look, this is the way it is, and
yeah,
like, and so we see this constantly. And I think ultimately, I think the one failure of leadership is that we don't hold people accountable to result. We
yeah,
hold people accountable to process. And then
yeah.
we think, oh, well, we didn't get the result. And so we just go back and we reprocess and we keep hammering on process. We keep hammering on assets and seats. And I have to see you
Hmm.
work and then they don't work. It's like, well,
Hmm.
no, hold them accountable to what you actually have to get done
Yeah.
and let them go do it the way they can do it. Because
Hmm.
introvert, extrovert, experienced, non-experienced, blah, 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 networking person, non-networking, like we all have our different ways to get this stuff done.
Yeah.
And that's really at the ultimately, I'm not a big remote guy. And people
Hmm.
always then think I'm anti-remote. I'm not anti-remote. I am pro find the environment that you work best in, not where you
Mm.
feel you work best, where it's
That you actually,
measurably
yeah,
you actually work best because
yeah,
that's where you're going to be successful.
yeah.
Um, you can't say that, well, I just love working remote, but I fail at my job. That
Mm.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so often that's what we see is
Oh,
I think there's a very low percentage of people. I would say 10 to 15% of people have the ability to work remotely and be successful because they're that driven to be able to
yeah,
work in an environment where they don't have that, right? They don't
yeah,
like the distraction. I'm an in-office guy.
yeah,
I'm just better working in office because when I'm at home, there's just too many distractions for me to be as successful.
yeah.
And then there's some people that are gonna like love the hybrid, kind of side of this. And so for me, like, and even on my own team, I have people working remotely, I have people working in office, and I have people working hybrid. And we tell them, like, you find where and again, we measure everything. So, like, we're going to tell you, right? Like, we know your baseline, we know what we need to get from you. And if you say, hey, I want to work remotely and you can meet the goal, great, have fun.
Yeah.
Like,
That's,
but don't tell me you want to work remote and then fail, but then say, but I love working remote. I don't care.
I don't, you obviously are not, like, this is not the environment that works best for you
Yeah.
because the fridge is there, Netflix is there are errands there, like there's different things that are vying for your time. And so, being thoughtful about, and which is, and I think it also honors them because it's like, hey, we want to bring the best out of you. This is because we want to bring the best out of you. It's not about being taskmasters, it's not about being controlling. It's, hey, how are you able to contribute at the highest level? Because when you're able to contribute at the highest level, the level of confidence, the level of, dopamine and all of those things that
Yeah.
come out are going to drive you. Like, yes, we'll get a productivity benefit, but then for you, right, you also get to feel that level of fulfillment because you feel shitty when you don't do well, right?
Yeah.
Just because
Oh,
you're
I
sitting
tell,
on the couch or in your shorts
yes.
doesn't equate to you feeling well. But when you accomplish, when you do, when you succeed, when you have ownership, those are the things that actually chemically, physiologically, mentally, spiritually help you be well, right?
Yeah. I have a line that I'd say that I think it really challenges people to think. I said, you can't have amazing culture and crappy business results. You can't have that.
It
And people
doesn't,
go,
those
well, wait
are,
a, you can't, I mean, so if you, but what happens is you can have really bad culture and then you start to drive success of the company. And all of a sudden, as the success of the company increases, the culture fixes itself, and it happens
Mm,
all the time. You can't have great business results in a bad like culture, right?
yeah,
But you cannot have great culture and bad results. It
yeah,
can't happen. People will
yeah.
go, wait a minute, I love working at this job, and and it's a death spiral of a company, and you're like, well, you can love it, but it's not a great culture.
Yeah. I love that. We're gonna have to take that as a snippet for one of as far as culture and love and performance and things like that. We're gonna do a quick segue before we jump into the rest of our meet. We're gonna have a quiz. All right. We're gonna do
Yeah.
this quiz. You have 20-year-old children. I got 7 and 8-year-old children. And so I think if we look at the generations, we're like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, right there. One of the things that I have been slightly obsessed with is like Gen Alpha and Gen Z slang, right? Like, what are the words that they're using? In fact, I
Yeah,
got
yeah.
called out the other day. I was texting one of like a niece or something, and then I said something, and she was like, "What the Sigma?" And I'm like, what is that? So I looked it up and and it is so deep, it is so complex, and they use it so flippantly. So we're gonna do this quiz and
Yeah.
see
All
how
right.
much you know, and I'm sure you will gonna get a 10 out of 10 on these Gen Z slangs. All right, let's see if we can pull this up real quick. Um, the first one is which of which of the following terms is another word for uncool? Is
Okay.
it skirt, SKRRT, chuggy, or bet?
Chuggy.
Okay. That was actually, how did you just do you use it?
Well, I'm a hip hop guy, so I know skirt wasn't that, and
Yeah.
I also know bet's not that. So
Yeah. Oh, it's a process
but
of elimination. It's like
yeah, good test taker.
okay, here we go. If something slaps, it is excellent or amazing, surprising or
Yes,
scary, or beautiful or handsome.
the first one.
The first one, excellent or amazing. Ding, 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 ding. Let's go. 2 for 2 for Sackett. Let's
Uh
go.
oh.
It slaps. That boy slapping. All right, here we go. Uh, uh, if something is snatched, it's snatched. That means it was stolen, fierce or on point, or exhausted.
I would say the first one, but like I could be wrong on that. Like
So
in
you
my
go with
Gen
stolen?
Xer, yeah,
Eh,
yeah. See, but
it's
like
fierce.
in the Gen X, if you snatch something, that's probably someone took it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, but yeah, fierce or on point is like, yeah, that thing was usually talking about a person or outfit. All right. So, which of the following means a look or a style that is extremely fashionable or sexy? Is it bussin', bet, or drip?
Drip.
You said that with so much confidence. It was like, I already know that. That was say less. All right, last question.
uh,
What does no cap mean? No lie for real, chill or without stress, or not cool? What's no cap?
no lie for real.
No lie for real? Come on, Tim, let's go. Let's give this man a ring. He
Oh,
got it. He
I
got
have
it.
some. I must have Riz.
Dude, that was impressive. That was impressive. We need to have some type of badge or something that you can put on your LinkedIn profile that shows that like a Gen Z
You know,
verified or something
the
like
hard.
that.
Tim, like the hard thing of all this is like that they change those words on a daily basis. Like that stuff is
Oh yeah.
changing so fast. Like
Yeah.
I saw one the other day where someone goes, "Hey, it's super uncool to use the crying emoji, like or the crying laughing emoji. Like you can't
Yes.
use that." And I'm like,
Yes.
"Hell no!" Like everybody I know that's a Gen X or a millennial uses that. I'm like,
Yeah.
shut up, Gen Z. Shut
Yeah.
up.
It's like, you
Like
know
Gen
what
Z,
you're talking about.
you're gonna cancel you right now because you said, oh, it's uncool to use the crying laughing emoji. Like, no, we all use that one.
I
Take it
got
off.
called out for that. Like, don't pull that. Like, it's because you got to use a skull. The skull is what you use now because you're dead.
Yeah.
Like, it was so funny, and I'm like, okay, that
Shut
was
up. Shut up. Gen Z, shut your mouth. You guys are dumb.
go to your room, get out of here.
All these young kids. Why don't we listen to young kids anyways? Like they know nothing. They literally know zero. It's like when they come into a meeting as an intern, like I got an idea. Shut your mouth. You just sit there and listen. Telling me not to use the crying laughing emoji. I'm gonna fight you because of that.
You don't own the emojis. Come on, we created those. Come on, get out of here. Talking
Get out of
about we
here.
can't use a smiley face.
Come on.
Anyway, so as we were talking about like the leadership, and you were talking about the results, and rallying around the result, and then how you do it, how you approach it will be based on your strength and measure it, and all these around that measurement piece, right? How does data, right? Data driven decisions for leaders to be able to say, yes, we're going to do this. No, we're not going to do this. We're going in this direction. We're not going in that direction. How does data play a role in driving those results in your experience?
I mean, I'm always been a data-driven kind of person. I believe in math. I believe in
Yeah,
science.
yeah,
Now, the hard part we have is like I'm much more confident in making a data-driven decision than a gut decision. Now, the data-driven decision also might be wrong, but
okay,
statistically, right, I have a better chance of actually, coming out in the right.
yeah,
Um, and so, like, we see this constantly. I spend most of my time in the TA world in terms of talent acquisition, and constantly we see this churn of TA leaders that fail. And
yeah,
almost always, when I dig into like what was their biggest failure, it was it wasn't that they weren't hard workers or they didn't know recruiting. They knew that, but they weren't data people. And
mm,
so their lack of data awareness caused their failure, even though they felt like they were working harder than ever. They were more
yeah,
stressed than ever. And
yeah,
it's because they didn't know the capacity of what their team could actually produce. And so an executive would come to them and say, hey, in the fourth quarter, we need to increase hiring by 250 people. And they would
hmm,
go, okay, we're on it. We'll work 24/7. We'll work
yeah,
harder. Working harder is not a strategy.
mm,
Going to them, having the executive come in and then being able to respond with, well, we're currently at 95% capacity on the team. I can give you probably another 25 hires, but the 225 we will not make, we will
mm,
fail unless we have X, Y, and Z in terms of additional resources. If you have that conversation with an executive,
mm,
they're going to go, holy crap, they're on top of their game
yeah,
and we'll give you the resources you need. But
yeah,
they're not going to, but so often people just go out there and they're just like, we'll work harder, we'll
yeah,
make it happen. And then
yeah,
they fail and they're almost surprised they failed. And you're like,
yeah,
it just working harder is not a business strategy.
yeah. What would you say to that point if we were going to make it, practical for somebody that's listening? They lead a team or they lead a certain part of the business, and obviously there are tools and resources and technologies to
Yeah.
capture that. But what would be some practical I can do this tomorrow
Yeah.
advice for how to start knowing your numbers, right? That capacity question is so good, right? Like, I know I got 10 people, we have X amount of hours, we can do this much, we have X amount of projects, so I can give you 3 more hours a week, right? Like, that's like but what can somebody start doing today or tomorrow to start tracking numbers like that for their
Yeah.
teams?
You have to know first and foremost, stop using time to fill as a success metric.
Okay.
It's the correlation versus causation argument, right? They always say, like the classic one is when they say like, hey, shark attacks and ice cream sales go up in the summer. And
Yeah.
so if we just stop selling ice cream, sharks would stop attacking. I can correlate those two, but there's zero causation, right? We know why that happens. And so
Yeah.
that's the same thing
Yeah.
in recruiting. We like, oh, time to fill. If we just are faster, we must be better. I could argue that you're faster and you're actually worse. Your quality of hire drops. You're not giving the time for
Mm,
the actual marketplace to actually, figure out what their best talent is, all of that good stuff. But so often, 90% of the companies that I start to work with, they're all using one success metric: time to fill. And then
yeah.
every year they're having celebrations around meeting their metrics. And then I go to their executives and they're like, our recruiting sucks. They're
Mm,
failing.
yeah.
And I'm like, well, they're having a pizza party today
Yeah.
because they're successful. And by the way,
Yeah.
you paid them 100% bonus every year for
Yeah.
the last 3 years
Yeah.
because they manipulated their numbers to make their time to fill like actually look good.
Yeah.
So and that right now, there's zero correlation from time to fill to success in
Yeah.
TA. What you can do is start to measure the funnel of recruiting. How many
Mm,
candidates in the top of my funnel do I need to get to the screens, to get to the interviews, to get to the hires by position, not just overall one giant funnel,
yeah.
but the funnel is going to look differently for every single position. And then from there, when they come to you and say, hey, we need to hire 25 more software engineers, you have specific data around what it's going to take for you to do that. And
Yeah.
if you know it takes you 30 days to get 100 candidates into your funnel and you need 1,000 candidates, well,
Yeah.
guess what? Like, you can do the math. Like, it
Yeah.
becomes a pretty easy kind of thing from there. But I mean, 99.9% of the time when I go into a TA shop, they can't tell me that. They can't tell me their conversion
Yeah.
of somebody that hits their career site to how many people apply. By the way, if I ask somebody what their conversion is and tell them, and they don't know it, but I'll say, guess how many, somebody comes to your career site and it turns into an application. What percent actually does that? The most of them will say 50%. It's 5.85% on average. So 94% of your candidates don't turn in to an applicant. You
Mm,
don't need more candidates.
yeah.
You need to convert more
Yeah.
candidates, right?
Yeah.
And this conversion thing is killing companies, and we're shocked that we haven't figured this thing out. And I'm always shocked that how do you have a job still in TA, but you don't know your conversion, right? Well, my time to fill is
Yeah.
37 days. Like, who cares? Like, stop it. Like, I want to punch you in the
Yeah.
face. I tell executives all the time, like, if you have a TA leader that comes to you and you ask them, hey, how do you know if you're successful in TA? And they give you a measure of time to fill, you should fire them immediately. And they're just like what? I said, because because I could tell you right now, you could hire me, and no matter what you gave me for resources, I could lower the time to fill in a year. And they're
Mm,
like, well, how? I'm like, I would just close jobs and reopen them. Like, I'm like,
yeah.
you can manipulate that number so quickly. Like, I can
Yeah.
make that number every single month.
Absolutely. So do away with time to fill, measure the funnel, right? Look at
Measure
the
the funnel.
funnel, look at how folks are going through your process and how are they converting, and do it by role, by department. I think that's really good
Yeah,
because again, we try to look at it in mass and it needs to be more bespoke. Like, okay,
yeah,
for these engineering roles, what is that looking like? For these
yeah.
tech roles, what is that looking like? For these support roles, administrative roles, what is that looking like?
Oh yeah,
And maybe the
like healthcare.
eyeballs are somewhere else, right? Like it might
Yeah,
not be on the site, it might be somewhere else. Go ahead.
in health, and no, like you said, like you're in healthcare, like nursing versus a cafeteria worker.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
those funnels look completely different,
yeah,
in terms of how that is. And yet we try to go, oh, we just have one giant funnel, and you're
yeah,
like, no, it's just not how that works.
yeah,
Plus, if I have recruiters that are working like RN hiring versus recruiters that are doing more kind of like ancillary hiring,
yeah,
I have to be able to measure them differently as
yeah,
well, right? It
yeah,
just that, but I need to have kind of like that baseline of what does that funnel look like, and then we go from there. It's the one failure, man, that we see constantly and then what I hear from them is they go, well, if I start measuring the funnel, it's going to feel like they're being micromanaged, and I'm like,
mm,
that's because you're going to use the funnel as a hammer versus development, because
yeah,
I will go down and say, hey, like even if you started with one measure, do quality of applicant. So, hey, every time a recruiter sends an application to a hiring manager, and let's say I send that hiring manager 10 people that I say, hey, I've screened these people. They're all great, or I wouldn't send them to you. I'm not going to
yeah,
send you garbage.
yeah,
And they come back and say, okay, I want to interview these two. Your quality of applicants 20%. That's terrible.
Mm,
As a corporate recruiter, it should be 90%.
yeah.
In fact, I could argue that it should be 100%,
Mm,
and that you shouldn't even send applicants that you've screened to a hiring manager. You should just schedule them for interviews. And like so often people are like, but we've set this up over decades where we go, oh, we'll send a hiring manager 10 people and they'll just go, oh, send me 10 more. Can you imagine if like you're General Motors and you said like every 7 cars that came off the assembly line, you basically just junked because they weren't good enough to sell? Like you'd be out of business tomorrow. And yet
absolutely.
in TA, we do all this work and then we just go and the people just go back and go, send me more, just send me
Yeah.
more. Like shut your mouth. I'm the expert in talent. I know the job. I
Yeah.
know the candidate, and I'm going to
Yeah.
set them up. And we're
Yeah.
going to have some false positives, man. We're going to have some that just come in and they crap the bed. But for the
Yeah.
most part, we're going to have good interviews and you're going to
Yeah.
hire people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that I think is going to be being able to measure and for leaders to be able to own that piece of their business. And I think it also, as we talked about before, it honors and makes those folks feel wanted, right? Because when you are thoughtful, conscious, intentional about how you are reaching folks, right? It's not just we plastered it on the website, and if you come, you come. If we catch you, we catch you. Like it's a very passive, non-relational, transactional type of thing versus, hey, I know you spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, so I'm going to put my efforts on LinkedIn. Hey, I know you spend a lot of time on, I don't know, Pinterest, or you're in the PTA group, or you're like, I know that this is where your eyeballs and attentions are. And if I want to bring you and your talent and your experience to us, we're going to do that there, and you'll convert to coming and work. Like those things honor
Mm-hmm.
the experience of, so measuring the funnel is actually a way to honor in that candidate experience. So the last thing here, we'll kind of switch to the wind down gears is this will be talking about kind of family, right? Family first, person first, human first, as husbands, as spouses, as fathers, as parents, and the lessons that we learn in how we attract and manage and lead people. I think part of our roles as husbands, as fathers, is making sure that we are helping our families navigate change, right? The environment that we are in, and making sure that they are set up for success and protected from the threats, right? That's our job, is to protect and to navigate. So as we thinking about that for our people, right? You wrote your book, I think it was like 2018, 2019 or so. As things have changed, right? It's been about 5 or 6 years since then. What have you noticed that has changed in the environment? You talked about AI and technology and what that looks like for talent acquisition. What has changed between when you wrote the Recruitment Fix to where we at now, and what has stayed the same?
By the way, so plug because the Talent Fix Volume 2 just got launched last Friday. So the new book's out.
Okay, the Talent Fix Volume 2. You heard it here last Friday. We got the new one. Yeah,
So no, there was a lot of differences, right? When Sherm asked me to say, hey, they were like, hey, we need like it's been 5 years since this thing came out. We need an
yeah,
updated version.
yeah,
I said, well, gosh, there's so much that's new. Like I would just rewrite it completely, and
yeah,
so added a bunch and did that. Um, AI's. I mean, when we talk about just change management, like AI is going to be one of the bigger ones that's out there. Um, and and it's not just in HR or TA; it's in every single function, right?
yeah.
That we have to become kind of these leaders around. And I wouldn't say like necessarily. I'm very hopeful around technology and AI. I'm not one of the people who are like fear mongering AI because I think I've seen in my career so much technology and automation change that every single time it came, it was going to destroy
Mm,
humanity, and take jobs. And
mm,
what we see in the technology curve, and again, historically, this happens time and time again, is that there is a reduction in all kinds of different kinds of jobs,
yeah.
but there's also an increase in so many. There's actually a net increase in jobs with every technological advance. And
Mm,
so what we have to go is to say, look, if I'm an individual, no matter the function I'm in, I want to know I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna dig in. I want to learn as much as I can about AI. I want to start using the generative models. I want to be a part of all of that because AI is going to replace jobs of the people who don't embrace AI. It's the people who embrace AI,
Hmm.
they're going to be just fine. It's those people who are like, no, like I am never going to use
Yeah.
AI. You're going to be out of a job and it's going to happen
I,
faster than you think, right?
yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
hey, jump on board, learn it, get involved, and then you'll be the first that people are going to be tapping shoulders on that says, hey, we got to figure out this thing. I
Yeah.
know you're involved.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
But I, every change that we have, right, in the workplace, and in like when we take a look at the future of work, for me as a leader, it's all about transparency, right?
Yeah.
I'm never gonna be person that's gonna lie and go, oh, it's not gonna cut jobs. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's gonna cut jobs.
Yeah.
And so we got to be in front of this thing. We got to learn how to use it because we want to be on the forefront of this. We don't want to be laggard and then reactive. Like I just want
Yeah.
to be proactive about it.
Yeah. That's smart. You got to be proactive. You got to see what's coming, and be able to, you know, get ready for it. It's not necessarily about, sometimes it's not necessarily about removing the mines or the pitfalls or covering the holes or whatever. It's just about how do you go around it? How do you build a bridge over it, right? How do we,
Yeah.
if we fall in it, how do we get out of it? And so, if we're busy trying to move something that can't be moved, we're wasting our time. So let's prepare for it. Let's be smart about it. And then how do we engage folks, right? That change management process. How do we engage folks in the process, get buy-in, build awareness, and help people move along that curve because we want them to be successful. At the end of the day, we just want you to be successful. We want you to grow. We don't want you to be left behind. We want you to, get to that future that we're all trying to get to and be successful in that process. So, Tim, the last thing I'm going to ask you here is you talk to executives, you talk to leaders, you speak across the country, you're all over the place. People pay you for your knowledge. So if we were to take some, if we gave you, I don't know what your schedule or your price is, but let's say we gave you $50,000 and say, what is $50,000 Tim Sackett advice that you give to an executive? Like one thing that we can walk away with, and anybody listening to this, watching this, can write this down and be like, Tim Sackett said what? Drop the gem. What would that be for us as we head out today?
Yeah, suck less. No,
Suck less in the check. Thank you.
I I always say this, and I think again it makes HR people think a little bit because again I'm a recruiting kind of talent attraction, talent focused person, but I also spent like half my career as a solid HR person.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think the number one job of the HR function is to increase the talent in the organization.
Mm.
Period. End of sentence. That's the statement. And then if you put yourself in that mind frame of saying everything we have to do increases talent, whether that is attracting better talent in, developing the talent we have, retaining, and so
Hmm.
we have this longer employee value proposition that we have, like whatever that is, your only job in HR is to increase the talent. It's not to
Mm.
be the mom of the organization or the cop of the organization or to
Hmm.
mitigate risk of the organization.
Hmm.
It's to increase talent and put everything in that lens.
Mm.
That would be an amazing HR department.
Mm. I love that. And that's so as you're filtering decisions and comments like, does this increase talent? Does
Yeah,
this increase talent? Mm.
that's it. Does it increase talent? And I always like it works at every single function. I've yet to find a function in HR where they couldn't ask that question. Payroll. Hey, we're going to make this change, and so often we see process changes where it's really more of a payroll CYA than it is like a benefit to the employee. And you're
Yeah.
like, does that increase the talent of the organization?
Mm.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. That is good. That is good. Well, anybody that was listening, watching, I hope you wrote that down, rewind it, listen it at 0.5 speed so that you can hear it slowly and let it sink in. Um, And so, Tim, thank you so much. This has been such a, I didn't even get through. I had some like other kind of like tangent questions and stuff. I was like, we might have to do just like we have a
Volume two.
Exactly. It'll be Tim and Tim Volume 2, so you'll catch us. But for everybody else, catch us on the next Humanly podcast. We really appreciate any thoughts, any comments, any feedback that you have on moving us into the future of work and the stories that drive us there. Please feel free to let us know. Tim, it's been so awesome. We will catch you on the next one. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.